Yes, hello. Welcome back to Somewhat Spooky Book Month, where I have my final spooky book of the month, and it is one that is actually tagged horror. Does it read like horror, though? No. So, I read Bad Cree by Jessica Johns, and as you can probably tell, it is an indigenous horror story. I expected it to be very scary. I went in knowing nothing. I'll give you that. But I expected it to be like a, oh my god, don't read it at night kind of book. I did not read it at night. But if you don't know the story, Mackenzie is a millennial Cree who no longer lives near her family. She's moved to Vancouver. She starts having dreams, and she's able to, like, bring things back from her dreams. Like, she brings a pine bough back, and, like, just, like, what? They get worse. She goes home to Treaty 8 in Northern Alberta with her family. And then things happen from there. So, back to the horror of it. It is horror. However, I think it reads more like a thriller. So if you were someone who was like, I don't like horror, but you do read thrillers, I think you'd be fine reading this book. It's like a thriller with, like, because of the dreams, it's almost like a paranormal kind of hint to it, where it's just kind of like, oh, creepy, but not like straight up like, ah, like there's the tiniest little bit of, like, body horror, like, near the end. But, like, it's not super gruesome. It's like, I had no problem with it. So, like, that should tell you, big ol' wuss me had no problem with it. Alright, so, that. As I said, it is an indigenous horror story. But, one thing I really enjoy about it is that the horror is not residential schools or generational trauma. So that's a plus. I mean, important things, but at the same time, just as I like to read books about Black and African American people that are not about slavery, or books about Jewish people that it's not about entirely the Holocaust, I like to read books by indigenous authors that are not entirely residential schools. I want to read about something other than your genocide. So, this is a debut novel. As such, it does stumble here and there, just kind of like, it gets pushed forward and you're like, really? That choice? But, like, so few, doesn't take you out of it. It does have some of the cliched lines, like, you know, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, or it took me a moment to realize the scream was coming from my mouth. You know, like those cliched kind of horror thriller things, or you're just like, okay. It has a few of those. I ain't mad at it. Like, people get so worked up over I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, and I do not give a fuck. Is it cliche? At this point, yes. And you know what's not helpful? Everyone in every goddamn book group pointing out that this book contains I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Rant over. Okay. Woo. Almost knocked over my table. That would have been bad. Okay. Things I really enjoy about it continued. Every main character is a woman or non-binary. And, like, yes, love the aunties. Love. Okay. As you can see on the cover here, it's kind of hard to see. It does have Inuktitut in it. And, like, each chapter heading is in Inuktitut. I'm assuming they're numbers. I tried to use my Google Translate on it, and that's not even an option, so do better, Google. Your Canadians need it. Like, I think the first time I saw Nukta was when I went to Winnipeg, and, like, the first thing we did in Winnipeg was go to the zoo at Assiniboine Park, and I was just like, the fuck is this language? Like, obviously it's an indigenous language, but I had no idea what it was even called. But yeah, that's definitely my first experience with that language, and I was like, holy fuck, this shit looks so cool, I will never be able to learn it. So, I do want to put out some content warnings for this book. Death. Sister's dead. Like, she thinks she's being contacted by her from beyond the grave, right? Text messages, millennials, you know. Big old thing around grief, like the entire book. The entire book is really about grief, is what it is. And I appreciate it. I appreciate it for what it is. Like I said, it reads more like a thriller than a horror, and just like the emotional healing that they all kind of go through while dealing with their grief is just like not something I really expected from a horror novel. Like, it's just the kinship that came from their grief was just beautiful. Like, there was times where I stopped and like took a photo of the page of the book because I was just like, I need to remember this and I will not dog ear it. Content warnings, addiction, smoking, drinking, gambling. Yeah, those. Also, it is an indigenous book, so colonialism is kind of pervasive in everything because, you know, white people be dicks. So, like I said, I'm not a horror person. You've known this whole month for Somewhat Spooky Book Month. I do not like horror. I do not read horror. I am apparently in my horror era because I have read so much horror this year, and I've liked most of it. I'm very confused about what's going on in my brain. Now, have the horror been like actually really spooky things? No, they're much more subdued, I feel. Or they're classic, like Rosemary's Baby or Something Wicked This Way Comes. Like, it's not crazy, oh my god, like the things that my friends like. I have a group of friends and they love horror things, and I'm just like, no spooky movies, please. Can we stop talking about this? Great. Like, I'm that bitch who's like, no. But I really enjoyed this book. And you're like, what? Charlotte, you enjoyed that? Yes, I really enjoyed this book. There are a few people online who are just like, this book. But like, no. It's a good book. It's not, like, if you're a really deep horror person, like I said, like, it might not be for you. It is a very slow burn. But if you're someone who enjoys thrillers with maybe just like the hint of paranormal kind of things going on because of like the dreams and like the Beyond the Dead text message kind of thing, like if that's the kind of thing that you're like, ooh, I like that, absolutely for you. 100% read the book. Like, as I said, there was lines that were like so pretty and so meaningful that I stopped and took a picture with my phone, okay? Do you know how rare it is for me to do that? You don't know. You don't see my camera roll. But yes. I appreciate this book. I see what they're doing. I like it. I liked the sort of different perspective that I got. I don't think any of the indigenous stories that I've read have been like that millennial kind of perspective. You know, they've been a little bit older, or they're a historical fiction, or like they're just not super modern, and like this is. And again, love the aunties, the cousins, all of it just delightful in also being kind of scary. Like, when I first started reading it, I read a couple of chapters and I was just like, yeah, I can't read this at night. I'm a wuss. I cannot do it. In hindsight, I probably could have. I figured it out. I got there eventually at the end and I went, okay. Like, I I was taking care of myself. I didn't need to take as much care as I wanted, as I thought I did. So, yes. On Goodreads, there is 6,190 ratings as of this taping, and they are what is that? That is a 3.96, which is basically 4. Like, do I really need 0.96? Can you just say 4? That is a 4. It has 4 stars. That's exactly where I would put it. 4 stars. So, like, alright? So, yes. Thank you for joining me for the final book in Somewhat Spooky Book Month. And we will see if I continue to read scary books, because fuck, there's been a ton of them this year. I have read... What is happening to my reading habits? Thanks for hanging out. I will see you around next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.